Hello and welcome. We're back with Soccer by Paul and Hady. As usual, one of your hosts, Hady Raphael, and I'm joined by Paul Vance. Hey, Paul, how is Ireland?
Ireland is sunny but cold.
Really?
But yeah, so it's nice to talk to you. I'm hearing you're getting some decent weather over there in Montreal, so maybe it's time to come back, eh?
Yeah, it's time to come back. To be honest, yesterday I didn't even have to wear my scarf. So, it's getting better. It's getting better.
Yeah, I'm going green with jealousy right now.
Perfect. So we're waiting for you whenever you're ready. I know you were up yesterday watching the CONCACAF game between the Impact and CD Olympia from Honduras. What is your general feeling about that game, Paul? Because, a lot happened. To be honest, I wasn't expecting Olympia to come out with a win. So what was your general opinion regarding that game there?
Well, I guess the overwhelming feeling is one of huge disappointment. Like you, I never saw that coming. I must admit I was a little bit concerned when Bojan didn't make the game, because I think that if we're going to create chances, he's probably central to all of that. We struggled immensely creatively, you could say in the first half, because it was probably even more obvious in the first half, but I think we struggled creatively all the way through the game. It was just a poor performance by Montreal Impact, and it's the first time they've beaten anyone in the knockout stages. It's the first time they've won away from home competitively against a club from MLS, and I think that just about sums up how poor Montreal were. Very, very disappointing.
Okay, I don't have that same opinion regarding the fact that, I agree with you with the first half, and we'll talk about that a bit later. I don't think that Montreal was completely poor during the whole game. I think that I was surprised because I watched, of course, the two games between CD Olympia and Seattle and the Sounders, and to be honest, like, Olympia wasn't supposed to go through at all. Like, Seattle was like, I would say, naive on set pieces, and that's the reason why Olympia was able to go through. I think also that Seattle was not prepared enough. They had a whole preparation in their legs, so that's why, a bit like Montreal against Saprissa, the thing is with Montreal that it went through, and it was difficult, but they did go through. But Seattle, they didn't go through, and for me, with Montreal, now with a few games in the legs and everything, I thought that it would be easier. But yeah, I was surprised. But let's talk about specifics, okay? Let's start with that game. First of all, you talked about the fact that Bojan wasn't here in that in the starting 11. What did you think about that starting 11? So for people that don't know about the starting 11 yesterday, so we had Clément Diop in the goal. Then we had as central defenders, we had Joel Waterman, Rod Fanny, and Louis Binks that have been starting from the beginning of the season almost. And then you had as a wing back, right wing back, we had Zachary Broguillard. As a left wing back, we had Jorge Corrales. And then in the center of the pitch, we had Victor Wanyama for his first start, with Samuel Piet and Safir Taider. And then up front, so it was some sort of a 3-5-2. So up front, we had Romel Kyoto, the Honduran, with Maxi Urruti, the Argentinian, that has a terrific start of the season. So what did you think about that starting 11, knowing that Bojan was unofficially injured? But officially, if you look at the team sheet that we received here in the press, Bojan wasn't listed as being injured. So I don't know what's going on. If there's a trade in place, I'm not sure. But it seems a bit weird. Even if on his Instagram stories he said he was injured. So I don't know if we have to speculate on anything regarding Bojan.
Yeah, I mean, I would have expected someone from the club to have come out and made some kind of statement about, not statement, but somebody needs to clarify, whether he's injured, what the injury is, and we have heard from his Twitter account that it's some kind of muscular issue, and that's really all we've heard. I think, at least that's all I've been able to pick up anywhere. As regards the lineup, without Bojan available, it's probably the team that I would have picked. And when I look at the only surprise maybe for me was Wanyama's inclusion. Not that I wouldn't have wanted him included. I absolutely would have wanted him in there. But, I guess I was thinking more in line with his history of knee problems and playing on that surface. I thought maybe the impact wouldn't have risked him last night. But I'm glad they did. Because it's exactly, I would have selected Wanyama as well, but I can't complain about the lineup. But even with that lineup and that being the lineup that I would have deployed last night as well, I still would have been concerned about the creativity. Without Bojan in the team, I think he's central to anything unpredictable we might be able to do. Everything else was really just. It was slow, it was ponderous, it was just poor. And even at the back in the first half, we were like, we got a saying here in Northern Ireland when things are kind of disorganized and all over the place. We would say they were like Brown's cows. We were like Brown's cows for some of the defending early on in the game. And, you talk about maybe teams not being prepared when you refer to Seattle against Olympia, etc. We didn't look prepared first half last night. And it was so flat and dull and boring and uncreative. It was untrue. It was as bad as I've seen from the impact in that first half last night. Absolutely no doubt about it.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree with you. I think that in the first half we were awful, like really awful. I haven't seen that from the Impact this year yet. So I think it's the worst half that the Impact has ever played in 2020 under Thierry Henry. But I don't think that the problem was that we missed only creativity, because we did miss creativity, but I don't think it was the only problem. First of all, in the midfield, the way that the midfield was done, it was some sort of a triangle with two number six, with Piet and Wanyama playing at the back, and Taider playing as a sort of 10-ish, not like a really offensive guy. And unfortunately, Taider was really awful in the first half. Like, really, he missed everything, all his controls. Everything was really bad from Safir Taider. And then you had the team that was trying to keep possession, and they were able to keep possession, but they weren't able to create anything. Why? Because they weren't exploiting in the middle of the pitch. They were only going from one side to the other without even switching flanks fast enough. Instead of going in like two passes from one flank to another, they were taking like 4 or 5 touches. So of course the defensive block was able to move around with the ball and adjust themselves whenever the flanks were being switched. And it was really wrong tactically. And I think that in that first half, Thierry Henry was completely outcoached. And that's my opinion. I think it's a tactical approach that was chosen by Thierry Henry that was completely wrong in the first half. It's not normal to see a coach of that stature really be outcoached that much by a coach from Honduras. With all my, of course, respect to the Honduran people and Honduran soccer, unfortunately, it's not supposed to happen. There's even people that were saying that the game between CD Olympia and Forge FC last year, the Canadian Premier League club that was played in the CONCACAF League, was a higher standard than that game yesterday, just by looking at the first half. And they were right, because I watched that game between Forge FC and Olympia, and Forge FC was a lot better than what the Impact was, what the Impact offered on the field in the first half. And I don't understand why the adjustments weren't made earlier in that half. You're there, you are able to talk to your captain. You are able to talk with the players on the pitch and pass the word around in order to switch things. It didn't happen, and I think it's it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable because we've seen it. And there's something other that I wanted to talk about. I don't know if you realized. But when Olympia was pushing forward, there was a lot of pressure on the Montreal defense, right? So they were pushing with like 4 or 5 players, right? You have 11 players on the pitch. Remove let's not count the goalkeeper. So you have 10 players on the pitch. When they're pressing with 4 or 5 players, what does it mean? It means that there's only 5 or 6 players in the back. So why don't you play long balls? And I don't understand. The players don't have any IQ. They're not able to think that, you know what, they're pressing with 4 or 5 players. Okay, let's go with the long ball because there's going to be some space behind that first line of pressure of pressing that was done. Like, we've seen Urruti make calls behind the defense. He made like 3 or 4 calls, like obvious calls that I saw, and he wasn't served. It's not normal. It's not normal. You're a professional soccer player. You're supposed to be able to see that. I don't know what you think about that because, I saw Urruti. He was livid. He was like 3-4 times he was yelling like, look at me. I'm just like, I have tons of space. And nobody was serving him.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of times where Urruti had a couple of heavy touches where if he controlled the ball better, we may have benefited at times. So I mean, I'm not, and maybe part of it was down to his frustration because, if I was Urruti playing up front in that team last night, looking for chances and making unselfish runs, I'd have been disgusted too, especially in the first half, because you're absolutely right. The ball went from side to side. It was crab football. It was awful. I think when I think about the two coaches, I think it's probably maybe not that surprising if Thierry Henry was out coached by Trollio. Trollio was a coach who's got much, much more experience in that role than what Thierry Henry has. He's played at the top level. Trollio has played in the World Cup final as well. He's been in charge of various clubs over 3 or 4, maybe different countries. So I think as regards coaching knowledge, probably Trollio shades it over Thierry, and maybe not even shades it. He's got immensely more experience than Thierry Henry. But the way we played last night, and again, this was my concern when Wanyama, not a concern, I was glad to see us sign Wanyama because he's obviously quality and he's an upgrade on what we have currently, provided he stays fit. But I was always concerned at playing Wanyama and Piet in the same side because maybe the roles that they're most comfortable with are too similar. And you're absolutely right about Safir Taider. He had an awful first half. In fact, I think we communicated last night, and I almost wrote something in Twitter, and I said, I kind of took it back. And I'm glad I did because 2 minutes into the second half, he rifled that incredible volley in, and you know what? If I'd written what I was going to write, I'd have been looking very, very silly. But you're right, we didn't change it. We just kept playing the same way throughout that first half. At least we changed it at half time, but it really needed something sooner because I'll tell you what, looking at that Olympia side, you're right. They were willing to attack at times when they got the ball with 4. We were incredibly susceptible to a ball over the top, and they were very, very keen to play that ball. So they had worked that one out. But the rest of that first half, it was like a training exercise for CD Olympia. It was just too easy. It was far too easy. And we didn't, they're 2-0 up at halftime, and we didn't even make them work for it. That was the immensely disappointing thing for me.
And you know what, Paul? It was kick and run. They weren't they were just kicking the ball up front behind the defense, knowing
Yeah.
that Fanny is like 38, even
Yeah.
if he was great in the second half, and we'll talk about that later. And Binks is not really fast as a central defender, and they played on speed. And it was a kick and run. You had two fast offensive players with Mangouche and Bankton, and they scored each one of them a goal. And you know what? It worked. It worked. But I thought that like it was very easy, like you said. It was very easy, and the adjustments should have come a lot earlier than what what happened, and only in the second half that this happened. But let's stay in that first half. I wanted really to hear your opinion. I wanted to answer what you said about Urruti. I think he had a great game, Urruti, yesterday. Yes, he had some heavy touches, but I think everybody had heavy touches just because of the playing field, because we know the turf in the Olympic Stadium, how tough it is to control the ball, and how tough it is to look at the ball rebounding on that turf. That's like really awful. Usually it plays. It's some sort of an advantage for us because we're used to that. But like yesterday, it didn't seem like we were like really taking advantage of it. And I think it's Olympia that really took advantage of that turf there. But you know what? I think that Urruti, the two times where he had the ball, there's one time where he didn't control it well, but the second time, that's I think one of the only mini chances that the Impact had, where they got a corner, and on the corner Kyoto was about to put the ball in the back of the net, but the goalkeeper came out and saved saved the cross there, and pushed the cross away. But I think that tactically something could have been done better. Some adjustments could have been done, and they weren't done. I don't want to blame any player, because I don't think that there was only Tyler in that first half that really was bad. But the rest of the players, I don't think they were bad. I think that just tactically it wasn't enough. Do you think that we can really blame a player in that first half? Putting apart, of course, Tyler that had really an awful half. But the other players, you can't really blame them.
I actually thought some players underperformed as well, and one of the guys you mentioned there, Kyoto, I had the impression he didn't want to irritate old friends. I just didn't see that he was committed to the task last night. Now I hope I'm wrong about that, but for me, he didn't do enough. He didn't look overly interested. Zachary Broguiar, we've seen his susceptibility in defending already last season, but he is a right wing back or right full back, and his defensive capabilities really must be greater than what has been apparent so far. And his part in the second goal, I would have been embarrassed, and I played as a defender, and certainly not at the level that Broguiar is playing. But I would have been embarrassed to be beaten the way he was by Bengucci for that second goal. So yeah, I mean, I felt, and obviously Tyler had a poor first half. I think we had players all over the field who maybe 4 or 5. Fanny played better second half, but he didn't have a good first half either. So we had too many guys who underperformed first half. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And of course, the tactics going into the game may have been fine, but once we realised, hey, this is not working, something should have changed.
Yeah, exactly. I don't agree with you on that point. I think that all the players were underperforming just because of the tactic, and that's my opinion. Like I said, only Tyler that really wasn't able to really control the ball at all. That was for me, really bad in the first half.
Yeah, but don't you get that with Safir sometimes? When Safir has a bad game, he has a real stinker, right? And, exactly. when he's not on his game, the ball's coming to him, and he's going to put his foot on it. It's rolling under his foot, or it's rolling over his foot, and it's almost as if he's thinking about 3 moves ahead before he actually gets control of the ball sometimes. And he was just like that last night, first half. I think maybe the goal helped him, give him a bit of confidence or whatever. But he's a DP, and you really expect better.
Exactly. And you know what? He showed us better because in the second half, first thing that Thierry Henry does, he switches to a 4-3-3. And by switching to a 4-3-3, so he removes Zachary Boguillard and he enters Orji Okonkwo on the right as a right winger. What was surprising is that Joel Waterman was the right back. We've talked about it on this show when we said that Waterman is a very versatile player, and he's able to play as a central as a defensive midfielder, and he's also be able to play as a right fullback, and that's what he did. I really liked that change, that tactical change, because what happened is it was some sort of a 4-3-3 that was switched, at one point to a 3-4-3. And that's what I really liked, is that, you know what, we're losing 2-0 at home. It's a cup tie, and we really need to score goals. So let's go and let's go and get some goals. And you know what, it worked out well because Olympia didn't have even, I don't think they only had maybe, no, they didn't even have a chance in the second half. In the first half, they had 3 chances. They put two goals, and the third one, I think Diop was lucky enough outside of his area to save it, and then to make sure that it doesn't go it doesn't go through, and it doesn't score. They don't score a third goal, but in the second half, we haven't seen Olympia do anything, and it's only because of that tactical system. So what did you think about that tactical adjustment from Thierry Henry?
Yeah, the tactical adjustment was good. It was necessary. It had to come. It was probably the right move at halftime. It was probably it may have been a move that should have happened before halftime. Yeah. But the other thing about the second half is, he must have booted a few asses at halftime because the intensity levels went up. No doubt the intensity levels went up in the Montreal team because they were too flat in the first. You're going into this is what I don't get. You're going into a big continental championship game, right, at home with your supporters behind you, and you go out and play like that in the first half, right? They should have started that first half the way they started the second half, right? And there's absolutely, because of what happened in the first half, made everything, I mean, this is stating the obvious a little bit, but made everything so much more difficult in the second half, so much more rushed. They were trying to force plays. They were on top. They were on top of the opponent second half, granted, but they still weren't playing good controlled football, and that was because of the anxiety that had crept into their game because of how poor they'd been in the first half, and not only how poor they'd been in the first half. If they'd gotten through the first half at 0-0, they'd probably, I think, come out in the second half and done a lot better. But because they were too down, the feeling and the need to chase the game was even greater. And I just didn't see the cohesiveness. I didn't see the control that I would have liked to have seen. I felt they were trying to force passes. They were trying to, do things hurriedly. And I'll qualify this by saying that, yes, they were the better side in the second half. And I think there was only one chance maybe that Olympia had second half, and it was one where Bengtson, I think it was, gave Binks a slip. And again, I thought Binks was very poor in that instance as well. And Bengtson ended up firing the ball across the goal with another teammate coming in who could have applied the finishing touch at the back post, but he couldn't quite get there.
That chance where it went out in as a goal kick. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and it should have been a corner, right? Yeah, but the other thing I would say, and I'm sure you're going to come on to this, is yes, absolutely, I agree that Montreal should have had a penalty kick, and maybe I can call it a frenzied approach, but a more intense approach in the second half. Certainly unsettled Olympia a little bit as the half wore on, and really. Yes, they probably deserved to end the game. Did they deserve to end the game 2-2? Well, okay, let's say they probably deserved the penalty, in which case the game may have finished 2-2.
Yeah, but you know what? And I think that was okay. Let's go step by step because there's too many things to talk about in that second half. I think they deserved a 2-2, and I'm not going to talk about only the penalty. I'm talking about the whole second half because I know I didn't want to open that door, but I'm gonna open it for you. Uh, Anthony Jackson Amel had a golden chance at one point
Yeah, he
with a
did.
header, point blank. Like he was like not even a meter from goal. I don't know how many meters, but like really close from goal, completely alone in a cross, and he completely misses the goal. And I can't understand for the life of me how he did that because he couldn't be any more free. He couldn't have a better pass, a better cross. He couldn't be any more free of marking. Like, how do you miss that header? I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Look,
Can you tell me at a good level? I didn't. So you played at a good level. So tell me, how is it possible that Anthony Jackson Amel misses that header?
well, yeah, okay. So I was a centre back, and if I'd missed that header, I'd have been disappointed. Now, I was never at that level, and I wasn't a striker. Now, a striker at that level should eat chances like that up. Now, um, don't get me started on Anthony Jackson Hamel because I may say
I want
something
you to
that's
get
inappropriate.
started. I want you to get started. So go ahead.
Okay.
So what do you think about that change? We talked a bit about Okonkwo, and we're going to talk about him later because he was the first change. But I really want to get you started on Jackson Amel that replaced Maxi Rudy at the 58th minute. I know that you wrote to me in private, and so go ahead. I
I,
want you to unleash the fury.
okay. I tear my hair out when I see Anthony Jackson Hamel warming up because it looks like he's going to come on the pitch. And Anthony Jackson Hamel is not a player at MLS level. He may be a player at USL level or something like that. But, I've watched this guy since the start of, I don't know if he was around 2012, but 2013 or whenever it was he came into the Impact team. I've watched this guy from then, and he'll never make a footballer. He'll never make a professional footballer for me. And yet, so many different coaches and maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe I'm out in left field here, but so many different coaches at the Impact have retained this guy in the roster. I really don't understand it. I look at his stats, and I think there was one season where he had a decent haul of goals. And to be fair to him, he doesn't start that many games, but I think there's a reason why he doesn't start that many games. And I just don't know why he's taken a spot in Montreal Impact's roster. I think there was some talk that he might move a few years ago to another MLS club. Well, hey presto, no club came in for him. I wonder why. And he's just not off the level. Now, the substitution that Thierry Henry made last night, I wouldn't care how bad, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I wouldn't care how bad Maxi Rudy's playing. And I didn't think he had a terrible game last night
I
at
think he
all.
had a great game.
But I'll always have him up top before I would even consider having Anthony Jackson Hamel even on the bench. So, you know what? I think I've said enough about Anthony Jackson Hamel. I'm not a fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but it's your opinion. I kind of understand why Thierry Henry did that because Urruti is a very mobile striker that's not afraid to come in the midfield, take the ball, look, give a pass, and he really wanted a presence in the box. And with Boyan not here, because Boyan is able to be that presence in the box, even if he also likes to come in the midfield and touch the ball. But when you tell him, you know what, stay in the box, I just want you up front, I want you as a pure nine, he's able to play that role. But Urruti's not able to play that role. He's really not a player that can be a pure nine. And on his bench, the only player that he had that was able to play that role was Anthony Jackson Amel. And I don't want to go into. I'm not a big fan of Jackson Amel. I don't think he's as bad as what you said, but I think he is MLS level. I just think that he doesn't work hard enough, and he didn't evolve he didn't evolve a lot in the last few years. I don't think he works enough as a striker, and That's my only concern. I haven't seen a big improvement by Anthony Jackson Hamel in the past 3 years. I see exactly the same player. And you know what? If you're a striker and you're someone that really wants to move up in the hierarchy as a striker, you should be able to put chances in the back of the net. And you know what? What really surprised me is that in the press conference, we talked to Thierry Henry, and there was a question about what do you think about the game and everything. And the answer of Thierry Henry was like, yeah, Jackson Hamel could have scored 3 goals. Yeah, but you just said it, my friend. You said could have. He didn't. And that's our biggest problem. He didn't. He didn't score those 3 goals, and he was supposed to be able to score at least one of those 3 goals.
Yeah, to your point, I can understand why Henry wanted a presence in the box. All I'm saying is I'd have been inclined to go with the lack of presence in the box and persevere with Maxi Urruti. It might not have worked either, rather than deploy Anthony Jackson Hamel. Yeah. If we'd somebody else in the box, if we'd somebody else in the bench, I might have been more inclined to make the change, but I just don't have any faith in this guy producing the goods for Montreal Impact. And again, I'll repeat it, I just don't think he's at the level.
I understand. Yeah, we're gonna agree to disagree. I think he is at the level, but he just needs to improve and like fast. And he's like 26 now, so it's
but how long?
Time.
Yeah, how long do we wait on him to improve? He hasn't improved since 2013, and we're now 2020.
I wouldn't say that we have to wait. I'm just saying that he's here. He's here. I don't want to wait. For me, if I'm able to trade him for something good, like for a bit of Gam or a left back, because we're going to talk about Corrales a bit. I would do it like in a heartbeat. But as long as he's in our squad, I just want him to understand that you're not at the level and you need to improve. And right now I don't think he realizes that he needs to improve. I think if you listen to Thierry Henry saying, he could have scored 3 goals, it's like he was encouraging him. And you know what? No, you shouldn't encourage him, because you know what? He had 3 big chances. And, a lot of people are going to tell me, yeah, but if it was Maxi Urruti, maybe he wouldn't have those 3 chances. And you know what? I maybe agree, because he was in the box where Urruti maybe wouldn't be in the box if he was in the same position. But
I get that.
Okay, you know what? You're a presence in the box. You create chances. That's perfect. But you know what? What's the point of creating chances if you can't put them in the back of the net? We'll see about Jackson Hamel. I want to talk about the first change, Zachary Bourguillard that went out and was replaced by Okonkwo. I think Okonkwo had a great game. I think he was the spark in that offense that made things happen. If you had like one player to point out, in a positive way, is it not Okonkwo for you, Paul?
I actually thought. And I thought Wanyama had a decent first half. If anybody had a decent Wanyama.
Yeah, I like him in the second half, because he played a number 6 role, only alone in the midfield, with Piet playing a more of a natish role. And I really liked the fact that he was able to dictate the play, and I liked the second half. But he wasn't bad in the first half either.
Yeah, I thought he did that in the first half too, and I thought he looked our most assured player in the first half by a mile. Yeah. Now he maybe wasn't that influential in terms of what actually happened in the game and what actually happened around him, but hey, let's remember it's his first game. But you've seen enough from him to see his quality. That's for sure. Okonkwo did make a difference when he came on in the second half, and he's got this all action style, and I think it helps to shake things up, and it's probably exactly what we needed at halftime, was that change. But again, I just felt that the whole performance, even though they upped the intensity levels in the second half, was disjointed, and I felt that Okonkwo at times as is his wont, and it's kind of the way he plays his game, and he's all action, and he's always trying to run. He's always trying to go forward, and he's quite a forceful and strong runner, and that's his game. But I just felt that even in his game there was a little bit of composure lacking last night, but certainly his all action style was something that helped to up the intensity. And I'll go back to the sheer lack of intensity in the first half, and sitting watching that here in my laptop at I don't know 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was. I'm like pulling my hair out. I'm like, well, what's going on here? This is ridiculous. It doesn't even look as if we want to score. But he done okay. He had a decent 45. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think everybody lacked a bit of composure because it was a bit frantic, and they really needed to score a goal, and there wasn't anybody like that was able to be really calm enough and have enough composure to put it in the back of the net. That's why I would have liked someone like Bojan, who has that composure usually and who's used to that kind of intensity. The other players that were on the pitch aren't really, it doesn't seem that they were ready to that kind of intensity. But you know what? They're going to learn from it. And, we're going to talk about it after. We're going to talk about, what they learned from that game and that what will be learned from that game. And I think that's going to be pretty positive. But we'll talk about that a bit later. I want to talk about that third change because everybody was a bit surprised. I wasn't. Kyoto was subbed off for Balou Tabla. You said that you didn't like what Kyoto offered during that game.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it was his worst game with the Impact, but I don't think he was bad. I think he was really great in the other games. I don't think he was bad. I just think that he was there was a lack of energy. And I think it's normal because you know what? He's been playing 90 minutes almost maybe not 90 minutes, but you know what? He's been playing as a first team starter in all the games in 2020. And for a winger and, even sometimes a forward, it's pretty demanding. And I think he was very tired. And I want to really congratulate Thierry Henry for, taking the time to give a chance to Balou Tabla. Tabla, everybody knows what he's able to offer. Unfortunately, usually he doesn't offer us much because he's not really disciplined with his play. But you know what? Yesterday, I really liked what he did. And I think the reason why I really liked him is that because he didn't have any defensive responsibilities. Usually he has a lot of defensive responsibilities, and he doesn't fulfill them. But yesterday they didn't have those defensive responsibilities, and that helped him a lot because he created chances. He's the one that created the cross with that missed header from Jackson Hamel. And you know what? I liked what Tabla offered. Well, what did you think about Balou Tabla?
Yeah, maybe if just go back to Kyoto first. I just felt that last night he wasn't there. His head wasn't at it, and I don't know whether it was something to do with playing his old club, but I get the impression that someone going back to face or their old club coming to face him in Montreal, you want to. You want to go out there and do well and create an impression. I don't know if that the fact that it was his old club that affected his game or not, but I just found him to be quite sort of abstract last night. And the substitution, probably didn't surprise me. In fact, if it had come sooner or even at half time, I wouldn't have been surprised. I agree with you on Tabla last night. I think he came in and he did all right. And, I must admit that, there was a time during the second half after he came on, I'm like thinking to myself, my God, we're relying on two players who have never really done it for us in Tabla and Jackson Hamel to get goals, and we're 2-1 down. This just ain't going to happen. And then a few minutes later, the two of them combined for that header that we just talked about, that Jackson Hamel sent wide. which really should have been a goal. And that would have been me with egg in my face all over again. But actually, my face was clean because he missed it. So, but that's not Tablet's fault. Tablet did, I suppose. Well, people always tell you the hard work is sticking the ball in the net, but Tablet did his bit by creating the chance, and I think he done all right last night too. Again, is he a player that we're going to be able to trust as a starter this season? I'm not so sure about that. We really got to wait and see and observe, because it's hard to erase past history. And he's a young man who's got a lot to prove to the Montreal Impact crowd. And I, for one, there is a talent in there. There's no doubt about that. And I, for one, hope that he can prove himself in front of the Montreal crowd, because it'll be a win-win for all of us. But he done okay last night when he got his opportunity. I agree.
Exactly. And you know what? I liked, I know that Waterman and Binks had their moments in the first half where they were really bad, but I liked the second half of the defense altogether. Yes, Binks, you talked about that the fact that there was, the only chance of Olympia came because of a mistake from Binks, but the whole defense, Binks, Fanny, Waterman, three of the four defensive players were really good, I think, in the second half. And that's pretty positive to know that they're able to play as a back four, even if Corrales was most of the time playing up front. Did you like the defense in the second half? Yes, I know that, it was a bunker and they were parking the bus, Olympia, but still, there were a few counterattacks and they were able to cut them off.
Look, they did much better in the second half. And the other thing I'll throw in there is, in the second half of a game like what we faced last night, where your team is chasing the game, the defense is always vulnerable. So they actually played better at probably a more difficult part of the game, in that they were always going to be susceptible to a counterattack. And they looked much better in that second half than what they did at the first, when things should have been more composed and they should have been more in control. So yeah, they done okay second half, but first half was
awful. Was awful.
Yeah.
Was awful.
Yeah.
But let's talk about. I have two other points before we move on to the future of Montreal Impact. The first one is, but you talked a bit about Victor Wanyama. We're really happy about his first game, but I don't want to talk about him again. I want to talk about that goal from Safir Taider, and I want to talk about the way he played in the second half, because we said it in the first half he was awful. I think, apart from that goal in the second half, he had a decent half. He had a few chances. He was able to link a few passes. He was able to dictate a bit of the game. He was able to create chances. I liked him in the second half. And when asked to Thierry Henry, because when he scored that magnificent goal, he looked at Thierry Henry, and when we asked him in a press conference, Thierry Henry answered, yeah, because I told them it's not normal that we have 75 or 80% of the possession and we're not shooting the ball. So I asked them to shoot the ball. So when he did shoot the ball, the ball went in the back of the net. So he looked at me saying, you know what, you were right. So what did you think about the second half of Safir Taider?
Yeah, you know what? His second half was everything that his first half wasn't.
Yeah.
He had tenacity, he had commitment, he was into the game. You could see it in his face. In fact, there was one time I don't know whether you've seen it at the game, but there was one time the linesman gave a throw in the wrong way when Montreal were attacking, which the referee later overruled because it was a Montreal throw. And you could see the anger and the complete frustration in Taider's face. And he was right to be angry and frustrated at that time. And any player in the situation that he was in at that moment last night, that's exactly the reaction I wanted to see. I don't know if we would have gotten that reaction from him in the first half, because his performance was so flat, so abstract. You know what? I take your point. It may have been because he was asked to play a certain role that he wasn't happy or familiar with. But even allowing for that, he was another one who just wasn't at the game in the first half. But yeah, a huge improvement in the second half. And I have to say, what a strike. And you know, it reminded me of, I don't know if you remember friendly last year or a preseason game last year where Mathieu Chonier hit one very like it
against DC United. Yeah, I do
yeah,
remember.
absolutely incredible. Two incredible strikes, but last night's was brilliant. And you know, something that we haven't touched on as well. They made a substitution. They brought a rookie goalkeeper, 18-year-old in at the start of the game. 15 minutes into the game. We didn't test him for the remaining 30 minutes of the first half.
It's crazy.
This is a cardinal sin. Absolutely ridiculous.
That was crazy.
And even in the second half, okay, we threatened him a little bit more, but I think we probably could have done more to put that kid under pressure. And you know what? We didn't.
Only if Jackson Amel had put that header on target, I think that he would have been tested a bit more. But you know what? Let's see. That's something that really drives me crazy. The second point I want to talk to you about was Samuel Piette, and I really want to talk about him because you talked a bit about saying that you think that Wanyama and Piette aren't made to play with each other. I don't agree with it at all. To be honest, I think that they are able to play together. I think that Wanyama can play a bit up front and Piette can play in the back as a 6, or vice versa. And we've seen it yesterday. I really liked what Piette did as a number 8-ish yesterday in that 4-3-3 or 3-4-3. I liked what he did because he was present in the box a few times and he was very close to scoring a goal. I think he was very good with his movement, and that's what's really important. Now he's going to learn that new position, and he has quite a bit to learn from. But I think it was encouraging it's the first time that we've seen Piette playing in that kind of position, where he's more closer to the goal. And I liked what I've seen for just the first time. I really liked what I've seen, and I think he can improve by scoring goals. He's never going to be the guy that scores goals from far. He's going to be a guy that maybe can put some sort of presence in the box and maybe get a few wrong rebounds and put them in the back of the net. And then the first goal that he scored and that he's going to score, and I think it's going to happen this year, but the first goal that he's going to score, I think that people are going to go crazy. So what do you think about that adjustment where we've seen Piette play in a more offensive role?
He did push well last night, and the point I would make was, when he did push well last night was when we were behind and chasing the game. Yeah. So, and he did get himself into position. So I'm wondering, is that why? Or was this a conscious, is this a conscious move that we're going to see throughout this season? Because I still feel that Sam Piette is still going to be the number 6 for us going into all of these games. And you know what, I do take your point that Wanyama could maybe play a similar role but further advanced. I can see that because technically and vision wise, he's got more in his locker. So yes, I can see that. But you know what, I'm not sure if what we saw last night in the second half from Sam is going to be a feature of his play next season or this season. But maybe if we're chasing games, it is. Maybe Thierry Henry's got into his head. Maybe he's being encouraged to get forward more. And now that we have Wanyama there, that if Piette goes up, Wanyama can drop and all this kind of stuff. So
that's what I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what I think is going to happen. It's going to be like some sort of rotation between Piette and Wanyama, one playing 6 and the other one moving up front. And, they can change their roles during the game. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think that yesterday, the reason why we only saw Piette up front and we didn't see Wanyama up front, it's because, first of all, it's the first game of the season for Wanyama. It's the first game with his players. and the fact that you're playing at the Olympic Stadium where the turf, how it can be damaging on the knees, and we know the history of Wanyama with his knees. So yeah, I think all that was the reason why we've seen Piet playing the whole half in an advanced role. But I think that when you go back at Saputo, it's going to be a rotation between Piet and Wanyama. They're going to switch, sometimes one is going to play in a defensive role and the other one is going to play in an offensive role, and they're going to switch through those roles during the whole game.
It's probably the most I've seen Sam Piet in the opposition box last night
exactly.
Than at any other time throughout his Montreal Impact career. And before anyone thinks I'm having a go at Sam Piet, I'm not, because one thing I would say, even in the first half, even if Sam's not having a great game, he's still in there giving it 110%. Yeah. He's still going in sort of winning balls for you. And I think it was that tenacity and his will to win and his inherent love for Montreal Impact, if you want to call it like that, that helped drive him forward to try and get his team back into the game. And those are qualities that you have to admire, and he displayed them in abundance last night.
Exactly.
To be fair.
And you know what? And you know what? Yesterday he had a good game. He had a good game. Even in the first half, I think he was okay. He wasn't bad at all. And I really loved his second half. But I think it's fair to him and to say that he had a good game yesterday. And we've been, a lot of people on social media are really going at him this year, saying that he hasn't been good since the beginning of the season. I think that some critics have been a bit too harsh for me. He's not the Sam Piet that we've seen last season. That I can agree. He's not at the best of his game. That I can agree, because he's playing a new role where he's playing, as a defensive mid, close to another one. It was sometimes Sadich, sometimes it was Taider. So he's not used to play with a second midfielder and on the same line. Usually he's used to play alone in front of the defense. But yesterday, I think he showed improvement, and I need to. We need to know when to be harsh, and we need to know when to say, you know what, good job, lad. And he did a good job yesterday by improving on his first few games of the season. And I think he's still going to improve. Don't forget that Sam Piet is still young. He's only 24. For a defensive mid, it's very young. So I think he's going to learn a lot.
I think it's we've talked about this before, and I think it's sometimes with a local player, right? When they do well in the team, people kind of overstate their contribution because they're local and they love him and he's one of their own and all this kind of stuff. But conversely, on the other side, if he's maybe, if his standards drop a little bit, the local fans tend to criticize local players probably, more than what they would someone else. So, there's kind of almost no middle ground for a local player, right? They're either up there, right at the very top and brilliant, or else if their standards have dropped a little bit, they're the worst player in the park. So sometimes the crowd overstate their contribution, and other times they're far, far too harsh. And I think that it's happened a few times where the crowd's been a little bit too harsh on Sam Piet because he's one of their own. But you mentioned something else, and we've mentioned it a couple of times fleetingly through our chat this afternoon, and the pitch. And I'm not making an excuse for Montreal not winning the game. The pitch was the same for both clubs, but both teams. But I don't know what it looked like at the stadium. I wasn't there. I watched it on TV, and you know what? It was like a patchwork quilt. And, it looked as if squares had just been glued down in different parts, right? You could almost see darker squares and lighter squares. And it was abysmal. The way the ball rolled over the surface, it was, do you know what, quite frankly, and we've had criticism from Bruce Arena, we've had criticism from Greg Vanny and his people last year, the year before, can't remember, whenever it was.
Even Boyan criticized the turf.
It's awful. It shouldn't be.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. And I think about World Cups in a few years' time. What the hell are we going to do in Montreal? You can't use that place.
No, it's going to be changed. No, it's going to be changed, Paul. Come on, man. They're not stupid. I'm sure they're going to change it. Don't worry about it.
You mean they're going to lay a new pitch in the Olympic Stadium? Is that the answer?
No, there's more of that. From what I've learned, there's a complete renovation of the stadium that's going to happen.
Is it going to be at least open? Is it going to be outdoors? Is it going to be? Is it still going to be under the roof?
The only thing that I have as information is that yes, there will be changes on the pitch, but there'll also be changes with the roof. The roof that you would have a new roof that is able to be retractable, be open or not. So that's what I heard, but that was like, a couple of years ago, and that was like the beginning of the project. That's the last time I heard about it.
Yeah.
And you know what? If they choose, because it's pretty soon that they're gonna have to choose the venues for the World Cup 2026. I think it's in the summer, if I'm not mistaken. So if Montreal is chosen, they're gonna have money from
but if Montreal don't have the right plan to host a game, they'll not be chosen, right? So obviously there's
with all his defaults, the Big O is still considered as a great place to play football because of the atmosphere that there is, and because of Montreal as a city, and because of the fact that there are so many great games that were played in that stadium, not only in the MLS but also in the Champions League, and even in the Champions League before MLS, because don't forget the 2008-2009 season. And I think that Canada is aware of that, and I think the US is aware of that, and I think that will win them. I'm pretty sure they're gonna have a few games, and I'm pretty sure that money will be given to the Olympic Stadium in order to make those renovations.
But a proper grass pitch, please,
for sure,
and a roof that lifts.
I hope so because it's going to benefit the city of Montreal, and it's going to benefit United 2026, and it's going to benefit us as Montrealers and the Montreal Impact for sure. So you know what, it's a win-win-win-win-win situation. So we'll see about that. We'll talk about it for sure here on our podcast on Soccer by Paul and Hady. But Paul, I want to talk about the future of the Montreal Impact. We've seen how bad the Impact did in the first half.
Wait a little minute now. You haven't told me what you thought about the penalty incident.
Yeah, I didn't want to really go into it, but you know what? For me, we talked a bit about it. For me, it was a clear penalty. It was a clear penalty. I just don't understand how a referee that was like really close to the incident went and changed his decision based on the assistant referee that's like 10 times farther from the incident. I just don't understand it. Now, I'm looking at the social media, and some people are saying that, maybe it's not a penalty because, his hand is very close to his body, and, he's not looking, it's accidental. I'm sorry. An accidental hand, as long as it increases the surface of the player, should count as a penalty. And we've seen it in the past, even with the new rules, because people are like saying, well, with the new rule, it's different. No, even with the new rule, this is a penalty.
Look at
and you know what? Even if it's not, sorry, Paul, even if it's not a penalty, you don't have VAR system, okay? The call was done on the pitch. There isn't any referee, any player, anybody close enough to the incident to really change the decision that was taken firstly on the pitch. So there's like nothing. You took a decision, you stick by it because you were the closest to the action. Like, I don't understand it. Like, even if it was maybe, a gray area penalty, the call was done. Why did you change your decision? I don't understand what went through the mind of the referee. I don't understand it.
Look, it blows me away, the sequence that happened, because for me, for me, the hand or the arm was in an unnatural position. So I don't understand people saying maybe it wasn't a handball. I thought it was fairly clear from what I could see on the pictures, on the TV pictures that we saw, that yes, it was a penalty. I think that maybe now, and I've tried very, very hard to work this out, and I've been watching the game a long time, as you know. I really don't know what is and what isn't a handball anymore. I really don't.
Nobody does, Paul, because it's not clear anymore. It's not clear.
It's ridiculous in trying to make it robotically clear. They've made it more confusing than it's ever been. What thought process went through the referee's mind last night? That's what really just blows me away, because he clearly
he had an awful game, the referee.
Yes, he did. And
even Wanyama was pretty close to receiving a red card, and we don't have to forget that, because Wanyama had a yellow card and then he had a high foot. I think that touched the player's head, the other player's head. So that could have been a second yellow card and a red card.
I think the referee displayed too much uncertainty at too many occasions last night, and the penalty is a perfect case in point. You have to be pretty certain of what you've seen to award a penalty. So he must have been pretty certain it was a handball. Now, if the Olympia players hadn't persuaded him to go over and speak to the assistant, it's a penalty. So they persuade him to go and speak to the assistant. The assistant, who's much further away from the incident, disagrees. That's not to say he doesn't have a better view, but it's unlikely that he has a better view. And he stands and has the discussion with the assistant and completely changes his mind. I just don't understand it. And I was at a game a couple of weeks ago here, and actually what happened that day. And the referee explained things afterwards, which helped everyone understand, and credit to him for that. But there was a handball, and the referee, the first thing he thought about when he seen it was handball and penalty. But he wasn't sure, and he checked with his linesman, his assistant. His assistant said he didn't see it because his view was blocked by another player. And the referee then at that point, and he was connected by, microphones and earphones and stuff. And the referee at that point awarded a corner instead of the penalty. Now, the fourth official, who was standing in the halfway line, was also in consultation and said it was a penalty kick all day long. So the referee reverted back to type, to his initial thoughts, changed his mind from the corner and awarded the penalty kick. Now, the fact that he was too hasty and awarded the penalty kick in the first place caused a whole furore, of course, because the team who was on the receiving end obviously weren't happy. Now, the TV pictures concluded clearly that the right decision was ultimately arrived at, and fair play to the officials for explaining it afterwards. But at least they got it right at the end of the day. That guy last night did not get it right.
No, I don't think so either. But you know what? We can't change that, unfortunately. But I think he had a bad game, and like you said, I think he was very naive in that game. I talked about the possible red card that could have been shown to Wanyama. There's a few decisions that were pretty weird by the referee. And you know what? It happened to Montreal, but it could have happened to Olympia too. And it's disgusting, but that's the game when it's not without when you're playing it without the VAR. And you know what? That's the good thing about the VAR. And I want to talk about something, because we're talking about the VAR. Josie Altidore. We know how much Josie Altidore hates the Montreal Impact and loves to taunt them, right? After the game, he went on the Fox Soccer Twitter account and said no VAR is a joke. And then a Montreal Impact supporter said, one thing we agree on, thank you. You'll probably say no, but to you, was it a penalty shot? And Josie Altidore, please just keep that in mind. It's Josie Altidore. He said, yes, this competition is now becoming what it should. You see how important it is the officials have to improve as the competition improves. It's 2020 and teams still getting CONCACAF. It's ridiculous. So that's everything that happened with Josie Altidore, and afterwards, of course,
and Josie's absolutely bang on with those comments. Absolutely bang on, because
afterwards,
the tournament,
let me just finish that, because afterwards, of course, Josie, came back to his original self, and he said, "But if it's gonna happen, then it should happen to Montreal." So yeah, for sure, he had to say that, for sure, and I understand. But it's a game he plays, and that makes the rivalry even better, right?
Yeah, it does. And
go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you, Paul.
No, it's okay, and you expect nothing less, and not from Jose anyway. So, but he's right about one thing too. Is this competition, and going back to a few years back. Clubs, especially MLS clubs, didn't take it that seriously, but the competition is now becoming what it should be. And you know what? Everybody's standards have got to increase. Not just the players, not just the coaches, not just the clubs, but everything else too. And I'm not sure it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about the future of the Montreal Impact, like really fast, because I know that our listeners might be a bit anxious that this podcast is going to be 2 hours long. But what do you think about that game? What do you think is gonna happen with the Montreal Impact, future? I'm not talking just short term, but even long term. Do you think that this game is going to be a heartbreak that they're not going to be able to move from, or do you think that it's going to be a lesson learned by the Montreal Impact, not only the players but even the staff? Because we talked about the tactical, the fact that Thierry Henry was outcoached in the first half. Do you think that this is going to benefit the team and the staff and the players and everything? I just want to give my opinion really fast. First of all, I think that Montreal can, and please, I would strongly suggest you to maybe save that comment, and will go through. I'm pretty sure that
we'll go through in the championship.
I am confident that Montreal will go and win in Honduras, but that's my opinion. Yes, that's my opinion. Because they're not playing a game until the next game, and Olympia plays a derby against Motagua in the weekend on Sunday. Right now, it's still scheduled. It's still scheduled for Sunday, but they're gonna try to push it to Saturday. So they're playing a derby against Motagua on Saturday. So it's gonna be a very very hard game for them to play. And
incredible. That's incredible that they would play that game on Saturday or Sunday. Yeah.
Exactly. Incredible. So I think that's gonna make the team a bit weaker. Even if the coach, the Honduran coach, said that he will do some sort of a rotation between the two games, I think the main players should play in both the games. So I think Montreal has a good chance, because I like what I've seen in the second half, and I think they're gonna learn from it and still go through. Now maybe I will be wrong, but I'm not that pessimistic. And for the rest of the season, even if they're disqualified and they go out of the Champions League, I think those games have given that team some sort of cohesion in the locker room, some sort of cohesion with the staff. The emotions that they played with, I think, are going to benefit them for the remaining of the season and for the MLS season. So I like the fact that the Impact is playing that competition with that high level of intensity, because that's going to serve them a lot for the rest of the season. What do you think, Paul?
Well, I think the more games the Impact get under their belt, for sure things will improve, because there are a few new players in there. There's a new coach. He's got to get his methods across, etc., etc. So I think the more that the team plays together and the more games, it gets all of those things, all of those synergies that you just mentioned will develop. So I can see them improving. Whether they improve enough to be good enough to get a playoff spot in MLS, I still wouldn't be convinced. Regards the immediate future and the tie with the tie with Olympia. You know what, I really want this. This reminds me a little bit of last year where I said I felt would win the Canadian Championship when we were playing Toronto, and you were a little bit surprised at me. Now the boot's on the other foot, I'm a little bit surprised at you, but I hope you're right. I just feel we always struggle when we go to those Central American countries, and I think we've won in El Salvador once, but we haven't won anywhere else. I don't think we've won a knockout tie.
There's the first time to everything.
There is, and last night was the first as well, because it was the first time that Olympia had won away from home.
Exactly.
So you know what? It's football. It can happen if the guys go out with the right attitude. If the guys go out with the right game plan, if everything's perfect, yes, it can happen. I just feel that at that venue, on the night, the passionate crowd, I just have the horrible feeling that Olympia are always going to do just about enough to progress to the semi-finals. And, you know, we may be coming back with a tale for Montreal Impact of glorious failure. I think we'll go down there and we'll do well, and we'll be committed, and we'll really put in a performance. I just don't have the feeling that we're going to get over the line, for whatever reason.
We'll see about that, but I just want your opinion about that before our closing comments of that podcast. So do you think that Montreal is like taking a fast track on the learning curve by playing that competition?
By playing in Champions League?
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely imperative that we're involved, that Montreal Impact are involved in Champions League. Absolutely.
But is it going to help them for the MLS season, do you think?
You know what? That's a good question. I think the unfortunate thing about Champions League is the position it takes in the season. And in other words, it plays right at the start before, you know, MLS games are underway and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, none of the MLS clubs benefit from that situation. It doesn't make them do better in MLS. It probably hampers their ability to be 100% in Champions League as well. So it's not a good situation for MLS clubs, but it is what it is. It is what it is, unless they change it, and we got to get on with it. If you're asking me, does it help improve the team and help them to learn, because continental football is a little bit different than the domestic stuff? Absolutely, I think it does. And absolutely, we need to be there, and we need to try and be in there every year.
Exactly.
And that's
I just want to say, give my opinion. I think they're going to benefit from it this season, because don't forget that Montreal squad, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because it's the first time in history that I'm going to say this, is deep enough to play on the two competitions. Don't forget that you have players like Steven Saba, like Emmanuel Maciel, that haven't really played yet. Raitala is gonna be back in a couple of months. Camacho didn't play yet. You have Bush on the bench. You have Baya that didn't play yet. And these are, you know, good players, not great players, but good players that can help the team, you know, doing rotations and everything. So I think that, you know, usually the problem with the MLS teams is that they become very tired because of that continental competition. But we've seen yesterday, we talked about Balou. Balou played very well, and you know, if we didn't have that CONCACAF competition, we wouldn't have seen Balou play. So you know what? I think it's gonna help the team, but we'll see. We'll see in a few months what's going to happen with the Montreal Impact. Paul, I want to thank you very much for doing that show with me, because I think that we covered everything, and I really loved that show today. I think it's one of our best episodes ever.
I think we covered everything and more about the events of last night, and I think we're both very, very disappointed. But I will be wildly happy if your prediction comes true next week.
Yeah, me too. And of course, we'll try to do another podcast after the game next week too, like we did today. Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening to us. Thanks a lot, Paul, again. And you know what? We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.